Guys, I'm all the way in St. Louis making this video. I got a chance to go to one of my brother's high school graduations, and if you're watching this, it means that either my flight was delayed or I hit a lot of traffic on the way back from the airport. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be able to make this video and share with you guys the study that I looked at. It's called A National Picture of Parent and Youth Participation in IEP and Transition Planning Meetings. Giving you guys a little background, according to the 2004 reauthorization of the IDEA, parents are to be equal participants with the school staff in the planning process in the IEP. Students ages 16 and older are to be participants as well in the transition planning process. Student goals and preferences are really be the driving force of the resulting transition goals and the activities. Now, some previous studies have argued that parent participation hasn't been meaningful in the past, and as well as parents have reported not being directly involved with developing objectives, shaping educational programs, and deciding on assessment procedures. And so this study wanted to look at what are the variables that really lend to whether a parent or student is involved and feels satisfied with their involvement. So this study looked at two longitudinal studies, one called the Special Education Elementary Longitudinal Study, SEALS, or the other one is the National Longitudinal Study, or Transition Study, number 2, or NLTS2. NLTS2 was a 10-year-long study that had more than 11,000 students with disabilities ages 13 to 16. And then at the time of analysis, and the specific students that were analyzed were between 15 and 19. SEALS was a 6-year-long study of, again, more than 11,000 students with disabilities ages 6 to 12, and then at the time of analysis, and the students that were analyzed were 11 to 14 years. So the whole age range span was 11 to 19 years. Data was collected by phone interviews and looking at surveys of school staff, as well as direct assessment of students' skills and knowledge. In terms of results, 30% of parents felt dissatisfied with their level of involvement overall. In terms of student involvement, those that came to the meeting, only 50% participated, and it makes sense that those that were older were more likely to attend the meetings. In terms of the correlating factors of those variables that I talked about, the first one they looked at was disability characteristics. Parents with children with learning disabilities are actually least likely to attend IEP meetings, while parents with children with autism are actually most likely to attend. And then it makes sense that students with higher social skills were more active and involved in their transition planning. And so this really raises the question regarding whether all students and parents of students with disabilities are actually being represented well in the IEP process, and then the importance of social skills for students with disabilities in self-advocacy and self-determination. The second factor looked at was student and family demographics. Overall, parents were a lot more satisfied if their child was younger, they were a family that was Caucasian and had higher income. And so this really points to both the idea that there's this parent burnout experience for those that have children that are older, and then also the reality that schools are probably not making the IP meetings and the documents and everything accessible to non-Caucasian and low-income families, and so they aren't really addressing the language, cultural, and educational barriers that are there. The third factor that the study looked at, was parent involvement, expectations, and perceptions. Parents were more satisfied with their involvement when they're actually less involved at home, which makes sense because The more a parent is involved at home, the more they're involved at school, and therefore the more they might feel like they need to be in control and involved in the IEP planning process. It also showed that parents are more likely to attend if they don't expect their child to go to post-secondary education, which also makes sense because um, these parents likely had children with a lot more need, and so they were more likely to attend the meetings. And then if parents were part of a support group and they were satisfied and had a good relationship with their child's teacher, they were more likely to attend and be satisfied with their attendance. The fourth variable was student educational history and performance. Students who have a negative school-related experience actually it doesn't associate with apparent dissatisfaction or lower attendance in the IEP meeting unless the child was expelled or uh, suspended. And so that raises the something important for the administration to consider, that there are potentially parents out there that have resentment and are hostile towards the administration because of that experience. And finally, school programs are considered as a variable, and students who attended a program in which they were directly instructed on IEP planning, development of goals and social skills and all that were more likely to experience meaningful participation in the planning process. So some conclusions to take away: we really need to find ways to engage a diverse array of families in the IEP process, considering language, income, and education, so we can translate informational documents about the IEP process, as well as provide sessions, informational sessions to introduce parents to the process. Another thing to consider is that we need clear communication with parents about the barriers of involvement and satisfaction. So really seeking out parent input as to what the barriers are. The IEP checklist book actually discusses how special ed teachers are responsible to prompt the team, including the parent, as to how each member can be an equal participant. We need to foster parent-teacher relationships. The Teacher's Guide to Special Education on page 24 mentions how parents are an essential part of the IEP team, and that a teacher can actually help a student by building a strong relationship with that student's parents. We need to provide specified instruction on transition planning for students, that especially those that are 16 and up, so that they can have more meaningful participation and have the skills to participate. We need to ensure that students without the necessary social skills are really being heard. We need to brainstorm ways to prevent parent burnout. We need to provide and encourage parents to attend a support group where other parents are going through the same process as them. And finally, we need to educate parents on the benefits and means of their involvement in the IEP process. So a couple questions for you guys to consider if you have time is: how are your schools doing in terms of making the IEP process accessible to all parents of different demographics? And then the second question is: what are some ways in which the school can help prevent parent burnout? Maybe brainstorm some ways in which to really alleviate the stress of the long haul that it is for many parents. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see you guys next week.